we're super lucky to have two Ethereum OGs with us today. And full disclosure, Jing, Karl, and I have spent an enormous amount of time together, and sometimes our conversations get a little bit spicy. We were just in the green room doing group yawning and push-ups together to get in the right mindset for this. And so our goal in this conversation is to bring some of the spiciness to all of you, and we'll get right into it. So let's set the stage. So it's 2014. You're at Wellesley. You've decided that college isn't for you.
College decided that I wasn't for it.
That you weren't for it. And so your plan is you're going to become a hardcore Bitcoiner.
Yep.
And that doesn't go as planned. What happens next?
Yeah, it's funny because there's someone from my Bitcoin past here, Natash. I just saw him out there. He was like, "Oh my God, Jing." He's like, "Whoa, it's been like 7 years, and last time I saw you, you were complaining about Ethereum scaling, and I never connected the dots with optimism." So yeah, I mean, I went into the Bitcoin community. I think one big thing I learned is that at the end of the day, it's all just a bunch of humans trying to build something together. And I think something that was missing for me in the Bitcoin experience was the sense of culture, values, like you're striving towards something together with people. It's not just the technology. And I was really attracted to Ethereum for that reason. I knew Vitalik already. We were Bitcoiners together. And
he had moved on from Bitcoin Magazine and was like had launched Ethereum.
It was the year he launched Ethereum, and he was the talk of the town. There was another project, Colored Coins. It was like basically the Bitcoin version of an ERC20. He said, "Hey, I wear unicorn T-shirts for a reason. It's to keep out a particular type of toxicity, and this is a very intentional choice. You should come and check out Ethereum." And I was like, well, gee, I really don't know anything about Ethereum, and everything I know is Bitcoin. And he goes, "No worries, let me introduce you to a man named Karl Floersch, who at the time was also onboarding another noob into Ethereum." And Vitalik's offer was essentially to take us around to all these conferences around the world and basically teach us what was ungoogleable about Ethereum and onboard us. And so, Karl was the Jason Rosenthal of Ethereum at the time, and he basically...
I only wish I could be that handsome and that young. But, keep going.
He had two projects at the time. He said, "I've got a textbook writing project and I've got a coding project. What would you guys like to do?" And because I'd been kicked out of university, I wanted to write the textbook. And his other friend had been fired from his mechanical engineering job and so wanted to learn coding. And so Karl said, "Okay, Jing, you write about Plasma, and Hayden, you code Uniswap." And so that's literally how it all began.
Right. So when the history of like the great blockchain revolution is written, that meeting and that conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But you came away with the big prize, which was Hayden had to go off by himself and learn how to code and figure out Uniswap, and you got Karl.
Well, Hayden built Uniswap, and there came a time where Hayden and I had a little fight because, I was getting ready to start an organization to build out Plasma beyond the textbook. And Hayden was doing the same with Uniswap to build out an organization beyond the first 100 lines of code in the first iteration of Uniswap. And so we fought over who would get Karl as the co-founder. And ultimately, I was like, you want to build DeFi or you want to build the fucking internet future, bro? And
cool.
Hayden was like, you want something that already has product market fit and definite upside, or you want to embark on some risky ass adventure? And Karl was like, you know what? Can I say this? Karl was like, you know what? I'm already rich. Let me go take a risk. Let me go build the thing that is longer lasting and see where that takes us.
Nice. I love that. And sorry, should have said upfront. So Jing is CEO of the Optimism Foundation. Karl is CEO of Optimism Labs, or OP Labs. And one thing I'll say about these guys is they have done, I think, a better job than any team in terms of figuring out the role of labs, the role of foundation, how to structure it. So if you all have questions on that, these are great people to talk to. One thing that I think anyone who spends any time in the space here is like again and again is that Optimism is Ethereum aligned layer 2 out there, and I'm wondering, like, was that was that core to your thinking from the beginning? Was that something that you like based on your background, that the Ethereum Foundation that you lucked into? Like, how did that all work, and how's that evolved throughout your now 7-ish years together?
Holy fuck, that's a long ass time.
Really is. I mean, I can take a stab. Definitely, it was a natural thing which emerged from the fact that we were a part of the Ethereum community. The original name for the OP, what is now known as OP mainnet, or like the network, was Optimistic Ethereum. This is really just a kind of mentality that I think especially was prevalent in the early days of Ethereum, where it's like Ethereum is not a particular thing that is other, like you are Ethereum, and really bringing Ethereum to scale. Even if you are a layer 2 protocol, you can embody Ethereum and you can kind of be almost one with it in some ways. But I will say that on a technical front, we were not always very Ethereum aligned, to be honest. The original implementation, we made tons of changes to the Ethereum kind of EVM, and that ended up causing massive pain for integrations and tooling and all this kind of stuff, which we then realized was a terrible mistake. And that was like the OVM days. And we kind of reinvented the whole stack, threw away 100,000 lines of code, so that not only can we be Ethereum from a cultural standpoint and really like embody what we thought were the Ethereum values, but also be Ethereum from a technical standpoint, and be fully compatible with all of the different tooling that's out there.
To clarify, we thought we were being Ethereum aligned, but we also realized like 90% compatibility isn't equivalence. Like, it's either one-click deploy or it's not. Even if you're missing a couple opcodes, the like amount of friction and lift that is required to deploy on your L2 is it's like a 0 to 1 kind of decision. So we're like 90% compatible, throw away all that code, and now it's all about Ethereum equivalence.
Well, and I think, and actually taking a step back even further, like if you go back to when you guys started working together and what you were building, like you were originally building Plasma, right? And the idea of an optimistic rollup came later. Talk about how that evolved and what sort of drove the change in thinking.
No one was using what we built, and
that helps.
It was early in the days of crypto, and their like product market fit isn't. It's something we understood theoretically, and at the time, anytime you announced something or published a paper, you would get thousands and thousands of likes because every single person was thinking about scaling. And to illustrate how archaic this thinking was, most people talked in terms of transactions per second. So if you went to any random crypto conference, there was like always some dude deploying this new blockchain, and the differentiators of that blockchain were always framed in terms of transactions per second. But we developed Plasma, which is like theoretically infinite TPS, and no one was using it. We had this convoluted Plasma predicate system, this like new programming language so that you could, create applications with Plasma, and no one was using it. And this shocked us because we had so many likes on Twitter. Surely someone would take this, literally thousands. And so we were introduced to the concept of a user interview for the very first time, and realized that no one gave a fuck about transactions per second. It was all about cost and latency.
And so how many times did you have to get punched in the face with that realization to know that you had to change? Was it like
still getting punched?
Yeah. So it took like it wasn't like you did one interview and then the light bulb went off. It was like you had to ram your head against the wall again and again, and then sort of finally it sunk in.
Yep.
And actually, I mean, one thing we've talked about is that I mean, I would say you are Jedi Master level at wait, please what I'm going to say at seeking out and signing up mentors and people to give you advice. And like, tell us about was that advice, like, did you always follow the advice? Was it spot on?
Yeah, I think sometimes the advice is hard to follow because what is an MVP? If you've never created an MVP before, what is an MVP? And I remember staring at this drawing of like a skateboard turning into a scooter, turning into a car as like iterative, value-driven product development. And a lot of our disagreements have been, what is the skateboard? How do we define the skateboard? Even today, like, how do you define the skateboard? What is it? What is an MVP? What does it mean to do things that don't scale? Like, what do all these,
All these like entrepreneurial platitudes, what do they actually mean?
Yeah. Everyone says it's really good. These really successful entrepreneurs, these bigwig mentors are saying them, and how you actually interpret the English words that comprise the advice can vary very wrongly.
And so, talk about what's been your I mean, like I think we can all agree. I will say something really nice. You guys have gotten to a pretty good place, like due to I think both of your hard work and leadership and determination. So how did you over time? And I know this is still a work in progress, but how do you ultimately decode the words to figure out decode the examples to figure out? Do they apply to optimism and what you're building? And if so, how do they uniquely apply? How do you figure that out?
I mean, I think we've gotten much better. Like, for example, on the MVP scenario, we are often faced with design decisions or directions. We need to figure out, okay, what is the next step? And oftentimes where we get really, really locked up is when we both are just describing what we think is the next step in greater and greater detail and not actually taking a step back and saying, okay, what is the common objective that we are trying to achieve here? An example, recently we were, figuring out, okay, what should the, OKRs be for this quarter? And it was, we could not agree on what the actual objective could be for the life of us. It just spiraled way crazy. But then there was a moment where we were like, okay, wait, what is for all of these objectives, what is our top priority in terms of doing, what are we trying to achieve? And we're like, okay, we want to execute. We want to be able to ship something incrementally this quarter and see some results. And then it was okay, now the conversation has diffused quite a bit because we are, we have established that common ground and we can slightly move forward. But sometimes, I don't know why, it's so hard to detach from a particular near-term worldview and zoom out. I don't know. It's still a work in progress. Hopefully we get faster at it.
I think also I don't know how many of you resonate with this, but when you first leave your family and you go to college and you realize for the first time the way you communicate is different from the way that other people communicate. What you think is normal in terms of volume, it could be considered aggressive by somebody else. All these tiny things that come together. And so I think over the years we've worked through, first our frontal cortex has fully formed. And so at least I'm making fewer risky, impulsive decisions. I think the understanding of how to communicate in general with other humans has also gotten better. Sometimes it's not that we necessarily disagree with the path on what we want to accomplish, but I might say something like, if we do this, it's going to be another 12 months without a single line shipped to production. And what I really mean is the way that we're thinking about this is too complex. We need to simplify. But what Karl might hear is, that's a dumb idea, and I do not believe in that product vision, and we need to radically pivot. And so then he'll respond as though that is what I've said. And so what could be a simple conversation could take, there's one particular conversation I'm thinking about that took 9 fucking hours, just going back and forth. And we ended up hiring a co-founder coach to teach us how to speak.
Well, we've talked a lot about this, but I mean, like stylistically, temperamentally, you guys are like, could not be more different. But I think, but you amazingly always find a way to, not always agree, but like you find a way through the toughest issues. And do you think, is that like just a lot of mileage together, a lot of repetitions? Like how does that work?
I would say it's our third co-founder, Ben.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ben.
Tell us more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like so Ben's head of research for at the Optimism Foundation.
Yeah.
Like what role does he play in the process?
I think he is able to decode my abstract, my flavor of abstractness, as well as Karl's flavor of abstractness in a way that we're not able to do for each other. And he's like this like communication layer. Recently, for just like a funny example, but very relevant, we were trying to create the Superchain SDK. And I was trying to like whiteboard us through this example, and I just wasn't picking up what Karl was putting down, and I got super frustrated. And Ben steps in and he goes, "Give me the marker, Jing. You sound hungry. Go down, make some pizza bagels, let me work with Karl to clarify his thinking, and then come back up, and then we'll reconvene." And so it's really helpful to have that. All 3 of us have spent an insane amount of time investing in each other and the way that we communicate. I think in this like next stage of optimism, we've basically gotten to the extent of what we can do through sheer force of will, and it's time to bring in like some professional firepower with like the co-founder coaching, with like business coaching, things like that.
That's actually, I think you touched on a really important point, which is that you guys have done, you've done a really nice job. This is a real compliment. There's no but coming.
Okay.
I'm
ready.
You've gone through multiple iterations of the org, the team, the product, and I think have gotten better every time. And what I've noticed in the time that we've worked together is it sort of always starts with you having this like spidey sense tingle that something like something or someone or some structure or some decision is like not working right, and then you become, I'd say, hell-bent on understanding that and fixing it. Like talk about, we actually haven't talked about this ever, like what goes on like in your brain and your body when you're sensing that, and then how do you turn those sensations into action and a plan?
I think when I was younger, or back in my day, I just assumed everyone was really smart around me and like I'm an imposter or whatever. And so if something didn't make sense, I didn't always push because I figured, well, of course it makes sense. I should trust my teammates. But the reality is, even if you're not the smartest person in the room as the founders, you have the best bird's eye view. And the best decisions come from having the best context. And so you certainly do have the best context. And so if something doesn't make sense to you and you push a little bit, you're right to. And early on, when I encountered discomfort from the people that I was pushing, I would immediately back off because I felt really uncomfortable creating discomfort. I think part of my journey is like learning how to push without creating that discomfort in other people, and having the conviction to like endure other people's discomfort when necessary. This is, something that Karl has paid the price of.
I was going to say, he's been the guinea pig
Yes.
on this through multiple
Ben and
iterations.
Karl both, yes.
And what I mean, like when you've had actually a couple iterations of the executive team within, across labs and foundation. how have you known when someone just wasn't right, and how have you made the hard decision that you're better parting ways and finding someone new than trying to make the person that you have work?
I actually think, Karl, you've done a really good job making swift decisions on this front. Do you want to? It's taken me a while.
I only have the only thing that I can say there is there's a kind of general sense that something is up. And then I start investigating that sense, and I'm like, okay, what's actually happening? Kind of writing down what is working, what is not working, what I really do expect. Talking to people like Jason, like others, saying like, what should I expect in this context? Is this weird? Am I crazy? Because first it's all just like doubting myself, and then at some point there's a moment where I'm like, okay, I need to write down what would happen if this happens, then I'm happy and we're just gonna keep going. And if this other thing happens, then I'm gonna have to make the hard decision. And then I just put that down, and then I say, okay, I'm not gonna think about it anymore. We're gonna play it out and see what goes down, and I'm gonna make the decision. Because I think the worst part personally is just the constant anxiety of thinking about, oh my gosh, is this going to pan out the way that I want it to pan out? Is this, not going to be the right fit? All these kinds of things. And then just like living with that and not being able to think about anything else. That is what I try to avoid. And so I just write it down, see what happens, and make the tough decision and move on, because there's going to be a lot more uncomfortable things to come. So I'm saving my energy for those.
No, I mean, I would say you're a person who would prefer to live your life without a ton of conflict. And when you stepped into the role of
Sure?
Pretty sure of Lab CEO like about a year ago, like you knowingly put yourself in a position where you were going to have to deal with like a lot more conflict than you had or might have wanted to. Like, how did you rewire your brain and your body to be able to deal with that? or have you?
I mean, I definitely still in the process of rewiring. I think that moment by moment conflict is the hardest for me, because I just freeze up and I start saying things that make no sense. So that is what I try to avoid even in this position. But the cold, calculated conflict, that one is like a little bit more manageable, because I can just like take time. And if I go on a 2-hour walk and I come off that walk with an idea, then I just like am ready to execute on it. And I think that's like the main thing. It's like need to make the hard decisions and then need to live with and measure the consequences so that I can update my priors and do it better next time. And that's just the role. And it's fun. It's a great growth experience, and I'm incredibly grateful even for the craziness of it.
Amazing. We'll move on from inspecting each of your psyches onto more mundane topics. But so one of the things that I think that is amazing about Optimism, and you guys have just done a great job on, is I think the strength of the strength, the excitement, the momentum of the community around almost everything that you guys do is pretty unique in the space. You haven't put as much effort into doing that as one might think you needed to like achieve the results that you have. What do you think has been the secret to your success?
I feel like we have put in effort.
Well, I guess you make it look effortless. So I mean, is that like, so from the get-go, were you like, okay, we gotta be the people's choice, or how did you do what you've done?
It's funny because the way this comes up in our coaching conversations with Jason is I'll be like, this is a problem. And Jason will be like, and he'll like just put his face in his hands. And we'll be like, oh shit. He's like, I don't get it. How has Optimism done the things that I typically consider difficult and still have these fucking problems?
Well, I would put it. I would actually put it slightly differently. I would say all of the things that in my experience in startups and tech are the once in a lifetime lightning in a bottle, like you're, unbelievably hard to achieve. Like these guys have it in spades, but like the blocking and tackling of how do you define a product roadmap and like ship it in the time that you said you were going to do is like, it's like that's inventing, new quantum sciences for them. So we definitely, it's definitely taken
I see
taken
my
us both a
teammates in the
while
back like,
to
yeah.
figure that out. But on the community, so I would say like the community thing is hard for like to do it right, to do it authentically, organically. Not many people do that well. You guys have. What have you like? How's that worked?
I don't want to downplay it, but I also think the bar is in hell. Like, we genuinely give a fuck about the humans that we interact with, and I think that goes a really long way. I think people can potentially tell.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we were authentic. We were students of the game. I don't know. I was a stan and have been a stan for Ethereum since day one, like dedicating everything to making this thing happen. Stan for open source, like actually kind of like believing that this thing could happen. And so I don't know. I think that there's a level of just if you love it, exude it, and people will vibe.
Also, I think, people say optimism has vibes, but what is vibes? I think vibes is like people are having fun. And so, like, let's be real, like, nobody needs technology. Like, we could just be on a farm. Like, there's like, life is potentially fundamentally meaningless. We're like mostly water. And so if you're not waking up and having a good time getting up each day, then what are you doing? The second thing is like, I think we put our money where our mouth is. And so we didn't just say we wanted decentralization and built a completely vote purchasable plutocratic system. We actually tried to build the decentralized system. We incorporated as a public benefit corporation. I don't know, these small things, they add up over time. We've had a long history. Plasma Group started as a not-for-profit. And so, over time, I think it feels intangible, but it's really just the outcome of a bunch of decisions that have genuinely stayed true to our values that give the perception of vibe.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I think you guys also. If I were to rephrase what you said, you guys live your values and you have fun together doing it. And I think one pretty impressive stat is like, what's your amongst your team, like over the 7 years, what's your rate of like regretted attrition, like people who have left that you didn't want to leave? I think it's like 0, right?
Is it 0, Harper?
I mean, we
Maybe 1?
Well, yeah. I mean, so like people come and they stay and they contribute and they generally enjoy the experience, which is pretty like that. That's not that like the normal attrition rate in any tech company is like 15+% a year.
Full
you guys
founding team is 6 people, and every single co-founder
yeah.
is still here.
No, that's super impressive. You guys are definitely doing a few things right in that regard.
And I will say though that this is there are certain opportunities that are just incredible, and so just got to be very grateful that the values and the impact and all the things aligned and the stars aligned, and we're here now.
Cool. All right, let's do a quick lightning round of questions to close, and you guys can pick who answers. So one, like as you think about crypto and blockchain broadly, what are the biggest challenges that you would like to see solved that you think people should be solving? Like if you could wave your magic wand, what should exist in the space that doesn't today?
Scaling Ethereum.
Yeah, exactly. Scaling there.
Well, you're working on that.
Yes, fair. Working on that. User onboarding, please. Users should not know that they're using crypto. They just like use it and benefit from all the benefits. It's amazing. And then eventually we also are going to eventually need to be able to build, private experiences. Users have their own information that not everyone sees publicly, but we just got to get to the point where we can at least replicate Web 2 before we have any chance of superseding it.
what is something that you wish people asked you about more that they don't?
Jobs.optimism.io.
Come contribute.
These guys are building their own things. They're not going to
right,
come work for you. Last one, then we'll turn it over to these guys. What is, you guys are failing this part of the interview. What is, what's one thing that you wish you knew when you were at the stage of optimism that that the CSX cohort is at now, that, you know, like sort of sage words that you can pass on to this group?
Like genuinely, I don't know how old you guys are, but everything changes when your brain finishes developing. And until then, it is incredibly fucking useful and helpful to have someone on the team with their brain fully developed. And like, it's like maybe a funny way to frame it, but you definitely don't know jack shit when you're 23. You think you know everything, so you want to redefine and reinvent everything. We had like Karl reinventing JavaScript frameworks because he thought there was a better way to organize whatever. It doesn't matter. Or like reinventing the wheel with the hubris that only a young engineer can have. And I think you overcomplicate things. You burn a lot of time and energy going in the wrong direction or in the right direction really ineffectively. And I think sometimes, at least I saw this in early optimism and in our peers, there's maybe like a trepidation or a stranger danger suspicion of bringing on the more seasoned folks. But as Josh Stein, the first hire outside of the core founding team, hire number 7, said, he was like, kid, I'm not here to burn myself out. I'm here to tell you how to burn you out more effectively. And he was the first COO of Optimism. And so I think people like that are worth their weight in gold. And so don't be afraid to shell out the big bucks, especially early on. I think that was the best decision A16Z ever made on my behalf for early optimism.
All right. That is a good place to pause this. We'll open it up to you guys. And hopefully, as you've seen, like Jing and Karl are unafraid to answer any questions, so don't hold back.
Hey, first of all, thank you for that. That was really cool. So just one, I guess, could be a quick question or not. How do you guys look at decentralizing your product? Like, how do you think about that internally to go from something like where you started and what the end product is? And then slightly second question is, where on the roadmap does sort of multi-proof, potentially including ZK?
I think decentralization comes in many forms. There's like governance decentralization, decentralization of the protocol, and then the decentralization of work. I think with protocol level decentralization, we first think about just building it incredibly modularly so that we can punt some of these design decisions into the future. For governance decentralization, the launch of our governance system included a blog post entitled, "This governance system will self-destruct." We hadn't really seen other teams build their governance systems iteratively, and that we knew we would get it wrong on the first try. And so I guess, long story short, you just deploy something, anything, and then be unafraid to delete the whole thing and keep iterating. Is that what you were trying to ask?
Yeah, sure. So basically deploy something, get traction, and then worry about everything else. But having had sort of the infrastructure to be able to repeat it out entirely.
Decentralization should serve a purpose. And so at the protocol level, like, what is the purpose of decentralization? Is it for liveness? Is it for security? And then form a hypothesis about how your design will actually achieve the end goal that you desire and see if it does. You'll probably get it wrong because there's no playbook for this, and then iterate from there. Multi-proofs.
Oh yes, multi-proofs. So we are already actually getting, pretty close to finishing up a second fault-proof VM with RISC-V. So that we'll start having some form of multi-proofs very soon, which is very, very sick. We already have multiple clients, and so the whole fault-proof, multi-proof system, I think that's going to move very quickly. On ZK, we actually also have the beginnings of a multi-proof system where RISC-0 is able to prove 180 interesting Optimism mainnet or OP mainnet blocks. So that means that in theory, one could already provide a validity proof for the entire, latest state of the OP mainnet chain. However, you would unfortunately need to burn probably hundreds of millions of dollars. So don't do that.
400K a day.
So don't do that. But you heard it here first. We just don't have enough compute to make OP mainnet a ZK proof system. But anyway, we're gonna reduce the cost, and eventually we can have validity proofs for all the OP chains.
We had Mo from Aptos in here earlier. I asked him a similar flavor of the same question, which is, do you guys see the world as ETH and L2s like OP and everything else kind of just falls away? Or do you view a more a world with many different L1s and L2s playing nicely with one another?
I mean, I'll answer this in a philosophical way. I believe that there's probably some value to having a canonical ordering of events for humanity. And this implies that there is one shelling point for a single, quote unquote, layer one, or a single ordering of events that we all organize around, whether or not that is actually, Ethereum mainnet as it, is instantiated today, or some other kind of hybrid system or something along those lines. I do think that these systems, unless they're really siloed, then they can exist really in a silo. They don't need to, connect back to this larger thing. I do think that most systems will connect back to the larger thing, and therefore we will only have one universal L1. But this is more of a religious point of view than a, near-term practical. I think for all practical purposes, you let all the ships rise or whatever, make everyone happy. Use what you want. I'm not super concerned.
A single set of standards.
Yes. There is definitely network effect around standards. So I do expect a majority of usage will be on the standard version.
Thank you.
If I understood correctly, the core team has changed over the years. How do you go about parting ways with one of the core team members?
Well, I think,
core team has...
the founding team has stayed the same.
Yes, the founding team has stayed the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so all 6 initial members all still here. Roles have changed, and that's, they say don't hire your friends, and you're like, but my friends are really fucking smart, and you hire your friends, and then that becomes a difficult conversation down the line. Sorry, what was your question again?
How have you?
Did you hire your friends?
Yeah, hired my friends, and didn't part ways, but roles changed. And ultimately, I think, be generous with compensation. If you don't think that the people are worth it, then they probably shouldn't be on the team that early anyways. If you're not excited and if you wouldn't rehire that person again and again, then, why have the stress of the, trying to balance the equity and things like that? I think that made all the conversations after that easier. And also, I think I lucked out. I found a bunch of co-founders that were all pretty low ego and down to have difficult conversations. And so it's, a two-way street. Sometimes you can try to have a heart-to-heart and try to lay out a way to build trust to make these difficult decisions. But it doesn't always work out. One of the members of the founding team didn't speak to me for a full year. And so, we recently reconnected and things are great. We've had our heart-to-heart there, but it's not always easy. However, at the end of the day, even if your teammates hate you, as long as they can trust you, that's all either of you really need.
Thanks again, guys. It's been awesome to hear from you and learn from you guys. Once you run out of smart friends to hire, how do you find and evaluate phenomenal developer talent past just the interview and getting just a good sense of how good they are, how unique they are, and their skill?
I mean,
You fuck it up first.
yeah, it's
And then you're like, we should probably get a professional, which, Harper, raise your hand.
yes.
Hey.
Definitely ask Harvey that question for sure.
If you have specific questions on how to evaluate engineering talent, I think Harper is, among the best in the world. Some of it is just learned. You develop an intuition for it, but hiring, onboarding, and firing are the most expensive things you could possibly do with your time at this stage. And so just be intentional about it. The same way that you iterate on your product, you should also iterate on your hiring and onboarding process. We used to just look at the resume, talk to the person, spend a couple weeks with them, and then feel bad if they weren't missing the mark and let them take up everyone else's time for a really long time before we made a painful parting of ways. And now we have a process, we have a panel, we have things that we're evaluating for, we have values, and values are actually quite important. You should read What You Do Is Who You Are. Okay, never mind, sorry, that's a tangent.
You mentioned that the roles across the founders and founding team kind of have changed. How did you guys recognize that you guys needed to sort of switch or change roles, and how did you guys navigate kind of the conversations and just kind of,
I think these kinds of things become clear with time when it's honestly a lot of the times it's better for everyone when people can kind of find their own place where they can be high leverage, and it really is not fun to watch someone in a role that doesn't make a lot of sense and like constantly struggling. And there's I think honestly Jing should talk about this, but I think there is a way to come at it with a from a teamwork perspective, from an empathetic perspective, because we're all just trying to make this thing happen, and being able to see where someone's career path makes the most sense is like part of that process. And that also goes for everyone who, if you're on that side, like I would hope to be, in the same boat where like we can all work together to be our highest leverage selves.
I mean, if someone has the courage and conviction to actually start a company, which already puts you in a rarefied air, it's miserable to be failing at whatever role you're playing. So, I mean, what I've found, and I think this has worked well for you guys, is that if you have someone who's committed, who is good at a set of things, but just not the set of things they need to do in that particular role, they will, in most cases, like if you have something better for them to do that's a closer fit to what they're good at, they will be, even though you might feel at first it's like a very awkward conversation, they'll be pretty grateful that you see that the current thing isn't working out, and even more grateful if you have a better thing for them to do.
I guess I just feel hesitant to answer this and give advice on it as though to posture that I have done it well. I think something that a piece of advice I've gotten is that it is fundamentally a selfish act to optimize for how you feel and make a decision based on you not wanting to feel a certain flavor of discomfort. If you're feeling nervous about having, for example, a leveling conversation with a close friend, then what do you need to build conviction that that is the correct decision? Because and this has taken time for me to learn, but on the other side of the difficult conversation and the emotional pain, whatever, if it's actually the right decision, with time, everything feels better for everybody. Sometimes it takes a week, and sometimes it's instantaneous, and sometimes it takes a year for the other person to also feel that. But at the end of the day, as a founder, as a leader, you're not evaluated based on how much people like you, and people base how they like you on how they feel the company is going. And so if you're making the right decisions and your team is winning, regardless of how they felt about you 3 weeks ago, they're going to love you now because the team is winning. And so I think about our Series B raise quite frequently. People on the team were really upset, said I was selling out, called me all kind of names. One person said I reminded her of her ex-husband, which, sounds like a great guy. And so, but I had conviction that it was the right thing to do, and so powered through it. And when the bear market hit, we had a fat fucking treasury. We were able to hire the best talent, build the team during the bear market, and all the people who had called me names had like completely fucking forgot about the idea that they had ever been against that decision or against the raise or had ever said those things. They were just like, yeah, like our compensation, like criticizing the comp and leveling, asking for bonuses, shit like that, so I don't know if that answers your question.
All right.
All
I think we
right.
drained the queue. Thank you
Cool.
guys. Amazing to have you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.